Welcome to the PJ Hoop Podcast. I'm your host, PJ. And if this is your very first time checking out my podcast, first and foremost, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day for checking out my podcast. Now, on my podcast, I like to cover high school, college, international, and of course, the NBA. Now, before we dive into today's episode, because today's episode is about basically post-draft. But before I dive into that, and if you missed my last episode, I just kind of want to reiterate what your kind of reset expectations with you guys moving forward. So after today's episode, I'll be taking about 3 weeks off. I'll be returning around the week of July 20th. But I'm taking those 3 weeks off. It's kind of like a sabbatical for me. It gives me an opportunity to kind of just to self-reflect, kind of restore and rejuvenate myself. I did this last summer as well. And coming out of that break, I recorded episode 5, which I'll leave the link up in the corner with that, because essentially in that episode, I was talking about the Peach Jam, the Top 100 Camp, the FIBA U19 tournament, and then Summer League. And I'll be doing that again when I get back in 3 weeks on July 20th. When I come back that week, I'll be talking about those same 4 tournaments/camps. Right now, the FIBA U19 tournament is underway, and I've been keeping up with it. But I want to save that, and I want to talk about that. And the Top 100 Camp already ended. But I just want to save all that, so when I come back from sabbatical, I can come back and come right. You know what I'm saying? I can come to you guys with some really good information about those tournaments. Now, today's episode is, again, like I said, my post-draft episode. So we'll start off with my post-draft thoughts. Then we'll dive into my draft winners, my draft losers, and then what to expect in free agency. Unfortunately, free agency's already came out with a bang. There's been so many transactions that's taken place in the last, I would say, 48 hours. It's been insane. So what I might do, since so much of free agency has kind of already been wrinkled out, what I might do is either just let you guys know what teams that I felt like were winners, or I might just, talk about a couple of trades that I really liked with you guys, okay? So I don't want to waste any more time. Let's dive straight into it. So my first segment on the chopping block is my post-draft thoughts. So I kind of just want to start off and talk about a couple prospects that were drafted in the draft. Let's talk about the number 1 overall pick first in Cooper Flagg. So I've said it multiple times. I'm going to say it again. I am a Duke Blue Devil fan. There's a personal reason why I'm a Duke Blue Devil fan. I'm not like a bandwagon of Duke or anything, but that's besides the point. I'm just saying that just so you guys know, because obviously I'm about to talk about a Duke player. So with Cooper Flagg, I just want to say this. I'm not going to go too crazy into Cooper Flagg. I think Cooper Flagg at some point in his career will be a top 15 player in the NBA, but that's not what I really want to talk to you guys about. I honestly just want to talk about the engagement and the fans that I think Cooper Flagg is going to reattract to the game of basketball. I believe, and don't quote me don't quote me on this, but I believe like in the 2010s and even part of the 2020s, we lost a lot of NBA fans, and I think it's because the NBA got a very, very political. And let's be real, politics are a very divisive thing. It's very either black or white. It's either you're red or you're blue. It's very divisive. It's a very divisive subject. And it's designed that way. I'm not going to go into why I believe it's designed that way, but it's designed that way, okay? Like, it's designed that way even though there's one common goal regardless of what party you're in. But I'm saying that because I think the NBA did get too political, but I think what Cooper Flagg's going to bring back to the NBA is going to be those blue-collar fans, those fans that didn't like how political it was getting. I think Cooper Flagg's going to bring those people back because he's not a political type of person. I've never seen him once talk about politics or even give that off. And also a fun fact, if you guys didn't know, Cooper Flagg actually does not listen to music. I know it's really odd. I seen it last summer during a Duke podcast. He came on and was talking to Caleb Foster about it. And I just thought that was really interesting because, in my opinion, the first thing I thought of is this dude's serious, because we all know music and pop culture can really morph and mess with somebody's mind and put them on the wrong path, But Cooper does not listen to music from what I know and what he said on the podcast. But I'm just saying that because Cooper Flagg's a very hard worker. He's going to hustle. He's a small town boy with a big dream. So I just think a certain parts of America, I think, are going to gravitate towards him as the NBA continues to push him out. And I think he's going to be a great player. So I expect them to push him out. You know what I'm saying? But that's just something I wanted to say. I think Cooper Flagg's going to attract people back to the game of basketball. That's all I wanted to say about him. I'm excited to watch him represent my Blue Devils in the NBA. Another player is VJ Edgecombs. So I think the Philly faithful, the city of Philadelphia and the fans of Philadelphia, I think they're going to fall in love with what VJ Edgecombe brings to this team. He's going to be very tenacious on defense. He's going to give you some highlight plays. He's going to give you some hustle plays. I just think they're really going to fall in love with VJ very early on. But also something else about VJ, which I think is even more important. I feel like, and we'll see at what point in the season this happens, or maybe it happens in the preseason, or maybe during the playoffs. But I think there's going to be a point where Joel Embiid, and I don't know if he's ever going to come out and say it, but I think we'll be able to know. But I think there's going to come a point where Joel Embiid will look at VJ and be like, oh, now I know, like, I really got to make sure I'm healthy. Like, I really have a chance to win a title with that kid on my team. Not to say Tyrese Maxey doesn't give him that feeling. I'm not trying to say that. But I'm saying that added fuel, that added, like, whoa, okay, this young kid is, I ain't going to say he's special, but, he got that. He got the talent. He really brings something to this team that we didn't realize we needed. He brings a new boost to the team. You know what I'm saying? And I think there's going to be a moment in the season where Joel Embiid's like, yeah, that kid, I got to make sure I'm right. Because if I got that kid on my team with Tyrese, with Jared McCade, with Paul George, we can win this whole thing. I think there's going to come a time where that happens. I think also the most thing that I'm really going to be looking out for VJ is how aggressive is he going to be, because obviously there's a lot of offense on this team. You got Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCade, Paul George, of course Joel Embiid. I'm pretty sure Kelly Oubre optioned back into his contract. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure he optioned in. We'll see what happens with Quentin Grimes. But there's a lot of offense on this team, and I'm just interested to see, how does VJ go about picking his spots? Is he going to be somebody that's only taking 6 to 7 shots a game? I'm just interested. I'm really interested to see how he navigates it, because at Baylor, that was one of the big problems I had with him, and I talked to you guys about that last episode, his aggressiveness. But I do think even with that being the case, I still think there's going to be a moment where Joel Embiid looks at him as like, okay, I really got a chance. I need to make sure that I'm here, like I'm present and that I can contribute to this team, okay? So I just want to say that to you guys about him. I think he was a great fit with Philly. I said this I think like 2-3 months ago. I said VJ Edgecombe to Philly to me makes the most sense and the best fit, in my opinion, was for him. But anyways, I just wanted to say that about VJ. I think he's going to be really, really great for this Philly team. I think he's going to bring something that this team has been lacking. But yeah, I'm looking forward to him. So we'll talk about one more player, and then I want to talk about some of the GMs who post-draft press conferences I listened to. But we'll talk about this player, and it's Yang Hansen. Obviously, the shock of the draft. He got drafted by Portland at 16. Portland moved back from 11 to 16. Within that, Memphis ended up going up and grabbing Cedric Coward, which Cedric Coward was one of my sleepers in the draft. So we'll, when time comes, I'll talk about him eventually. But so yeah, Memphis traded up. Memphis gave Portland the 16th pick, and then also, I believe it's 2028 first from Orlando. I'm pretty sure it's that. I don't have it in front of me. But anyways, they drafted Yang Hansen. The dude was in the stands. Probably by far the shocker of the draft. I mean, that was the most shocking pick of the draft. Come to find out, I guess there was a multitude of teams that was getting ready to take him after Portland. We'll never know how true or how false that is, but from my understanding, I heard that Minnesota and Brooklyn were getting ready to take him, which kind of makes sense because Minnesota ended up drafting Joan Beringer right after, and then Brooklyn took Danny Wolf. So I can see that. I can see why they would take Yang Hansen. So I've heard of Yang. I've watched him play, but I didn't pay attention to him. You get what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to keep it frank with you guys. So I don't know a ton about the kid. But like I said, I've seen him play in the USA versus the World, the Nike Hoop Summit game. I've seen that. And then I've seen him play in a couple exhibition games. I believe it was last year. He played in Summer League in some exhibition games. So I've seen him there, but I just didn't pay much mind to him. But from what I learned, I guess Portland's had their eyes on him for the last 2 years or whatnot. Mike Schmidt, this for sure was a Mike Schmidt's pick, no doubt. And the first thing that came to my mind when this happened, one, I was mad because they didn't take Carter Bryant. If I'm being honest with you guys, I was mad about that. But also I thought, okay, this team, Portland must not trust Donovan Clingan. To some extent, they don't trust Donovan Clingan. And kind of Chauncey Billups, in a way, hinted that to me during the press conference. He said some words along the line of, I don't imagine a place where Yang Hansen and Donovan Clingan are playing side by side. He said that openly. Okay, you can go back and watch the press conference with Yang Hansen and with Joe Cronin. He said that. But I want to say that to say this. So they don't trust, I think they've mistrusted Donovan Clingan. And I told you guys, I've been on here on the record multiple times. My number one problem with Donovan Clingan and concern with him is his weight. I said, and I've said it, I said it last summer before the season even started. He needs to lose 20 to 30 pounds. And I still stand by that because Donovan Clingan could wreak havoc. If he loses, even this last year, I think he had a game where he had 10 blocks. I think it was a game against Minnesota. I think he had 10 blocks. I think it was one of those games where they had like the back-to-back against Minnesota. And then also Shaden Sharp with Nuke in one of those games. But yeah, Donovan Clingan, like, he's a really good defensive player right now, but he has another gear I know he can get to. And I think he needs to lose that 20 to 30 pounds because there was times during the season where he was just a step slow on the switches. And then in the playoffs, we already know what happens. People hunt out matchups, so he needs to lose weight. But I think that's why Portland took Yang Hansen. And I also want to announce to you guys that I'm actually going to be getting season tickets to the Portland Trailblazers this season. I'll be buying my tickets pretty soon here. I'm kind of just trying to just figure out if my friends want to get them with me or not. If they don't, I'll just get them myself. But yeah, so I'll be watching this team pretty closely this year. So yeah, I just wanted to announce that to you guys. But now, I want to talk about some of these GMs. So we'll start with Zach Kleiman, and he's the GM of the Memphis Grizzlies. I really like this guy. I watched his press conference, and he straight up said, we won't be competing for a title next year. We know that, and I like him because he's open. He's open, honest, and being transparent with the media. And just his answers were just very direct and open. There wasn't no skimming, no politics involved. I like his approach, but also that could rub some players the wrong way. So that's something I'm taking a mental note of, So I just wanted to throw that out to you guys because some people don't like that stuff. Some people don't like hearing the truth. They rather live in their truth, if you know what I'm saying. But yeah, I really like Zach Kleiman. I liked some of the stuff he was saying. But yeah, I just wanted to tell you guys that about him. He's a very blunt dude, very blunt, very straightforward with it. And I think there was even another time during the season where he said something similar, like, yeah, we're for sure going to make some trades. I think he said something like that, along that lines, right after they got eliminated from the playoffs. I think he said something like he was really mad about that. Another GM I wanted to talk about was Jeff Peterson of the Charlotte Hornets. It's kind of unfortunate because it's kind of already happened, but he was in his press conference, he hinted about them trying to get a center this offseason. In his press conference, he didn't seem that happy about having Nurk start. But obviously, I wrote these notes literally the day after the draft, after the second round. So, yeah, I should have probably recorded this pod a lot sooner. But yeah, he said that. I like him as a GM, though. He seemed like a pretty level-headed, intelligent dude. One of my favorite GMs, I think, is Will Dawkins of the Washington Wizards. I really like him, man. He gives me a very, cold cut, this is how it is. This is our structure. This is our foundation. No BS type of feel. I just really like his demeanor. I really, really like his demeanor. And Washington's also made some pretty good trades and gained a couple draft assets, too, since he's taken over. There was one thing that really stood out to me. So a reporter kind of asked him about film time with Trey Johnson. And I guess Trey Johnson in his own interview was basically Dawkins basically was kind of critiquing me and just showing me plays where I took off and wasn't doing good. And then Will Dawkins' response was straight up, no joke, not joking around, very serious. Was yeah, I'm going to have to tell him he can't be doing that anymore. And I'm just okay, sometimes GMs will joke around about it, try to throw a joke to the media, but no, he was serious. He was really, really serious about that. So it was just something that I thought was really interesting. He also said something that I thought was interesting. He said that he expects Keyshawn George to have a big season this upcoming season. He said Keyshawn has really shown some improvements and has religiously been in the gym, so I'll be looking out for that. The last GM I want to talk to you guys about is Bobby Webster of the Toronto Raptors. So there was something going around on social media, where Colin Murray basically was he said the F word following Toronto selected him. Come to find out, from what the GM, based on the questions and the answers the GM was given and asked, basically he was saying that he said the F word because Colin was just surprised that Toronto took him. because they didn't give him any indication that they were going to take him, and normally teams do. Normally teams will let the player like, hey, basically if you're here, we're going to take you, or hey, we're going to draft up and take you, So it was basically based off of that, but come to find out they had a really good dinner. They said Colin Murray seemed very interested in being a part of the young group, and they also said that he was extremely mature and that they weren't worried about the spacing with him and Scotty Barnes. I got a different opinion about that, but that's, we'll talk about that when we get to their season preview. I think they really are trying to get off of RJ Barrett. We'll see what happens as time wanes on. But it sounds like, just based on what the dude was saying, it sounded like Colin Murray was going to be a starter sooner than later is what I took from his press conference. But yeah, it seems like Colin was very thrilled about joining the Toronto Raptors. So that concludes my post-draft thoughts. Obviously, there was a lot of trades that even happened within the draft that I could sit up here and talk to you guys about, but we'll save that stuff for when we get to our season preview episodes when we talk about all these teams individually, okay? So we'll go into the next segment. So my next segment is my draft winners. Okay. So I'll go over my draft winners with you guys. I wanted to minimize it to only about 3 to 4 teams. I ended up writing about 6, 7 different teams. So just bear with me, okay? We'll go through this pretty fast. Because since my last segment was pretty long, I spent like almost 14 minutes on the last segment. So I don't want to make this episode too long. So one of my draft winners is the Oklahoma City Thunder. They ended up drafting my guy Thomas Sorber out of Georgetown. He's a power forward / center. They ended up drafting Thomas Sorber. He's more of a center, I would say. They drafted him. He was one of my draft sleepers. So I was very surprised that he fell to Oklahoma and they were able to get him. But then they also drafted a guy named Brooke Barnhizer. He was a pretty great college defender. I don't know if he's necessarily going to make the main roster and get playing time with OKC. But I'm mainly putting them there as my draft winners because of Thomas Sorber. But then also they ended up trading pick 24 for a 2027 top 16 protected from the Spurs. So they ended up gaining the first round pick while also getting their guy in Thomas Sorber. I think also, I literally told you guys during my last episode to watch out for Oklahoma City, maybe getting off either both or one of the picks. So I just thought that was kind of ironic. That's what they ended up doing. Another team I want to give a shout out to. This team honestly has won in the draft and free agency, and that's the Atlanta Hawks. Atlanta ended up drafting Asa Newell. And Asa Newell was he was on my lottery. He was one of my top 15 players going into the draft. But also, potentially the gem of the night was they ended up getting the best pick of either New Orleans or the Bucks in next year's draft. So if one of these teams, land in the lottery, whatever one's higher will go to Atlanta, which is just, I don't know. I don't know what New Orleans was thinking. I hope it pays off for them, though. Another team who I thought was a draft winner was the San Antonio Spurs. Obviously, they got Dylan Harper. But again, another team that got another one of my draft sleepers. They ended up drafting Carter Bryant, which I was so mad about. I was so mad about that. Another team is the Miami Heat. They ended up drafting Kasper Yakachonis at pick number 20, which was just mind-blowing because I had him. Yakachonis was number 10 on my big board. My biggest problem with him was his assist to turnover ratio and him handling double teams in the pick and roll. But he's going to probably the ideal situation where they're gonna really help him clean up his turnovers and it being in that Heat culture. So I really like that draft pick for Miami. Another team who had a really good draft in my opinion was the Charlotte Hornets. They ended up drafting my guy Con Knipple. They ended up getting Liam McNeely. They got a Duke product, Sion James, which Sion James, if you're not familiar with his game, he was kind of like a college version of Lou Dort. So that's what he's going to bring to the team. We'll see if he actually makes the roster or get minutes. But I really liked I had him as one of my second round values. So it was interesting to see Charlotte took him. But then also they got a 2029 first from Phoenix due to the Mark Williams trade. Another team that I thought had a really, really good draft was the Phoenix Suns. I mean, they were wheeling and dealing all night. They double jumped twice in the second round. They got their number one guy on the draft board in Kamen Malawach at 10. And I saw a video where Rich Paul was talking to Matt Ishbia and straight up told him, basically asking him, what if I told you I can get you Kamen Malawach? What if he's available at 10? And Matt Ishbia was like, yeah, I would love that. And straight up, Rich Paul was like, done. He said done. I thought that was just cold. I thought that was cold. In the comments, people was hating on him. Oh, he shouldn't be able to do that. But for him to have that kind of pull, you got to respect that, bro. Like, you got to respect somebody be able to dominate an industry the way he's dominating. You know, people hate greatness. It's so weird. People hate it when you become great, you know, but they respect you when you're an underdog. Just really weird concept. But anyways, I want to give them some love because for their tenacity and not giving up. They got Common Malawach. They ended up getting Rasheer Fleming in the second round, where some people had Rasheer Fleming in their lottery. I didn't have him in my lottery, but some people had him all the way in their lottery. So for them to get him in the second round, and I think he's similar or could become potentially like a Jonathan Isaac for this Phoenix Suns team. Him and Ryan Dunn in that lineup, they're going to be crazy long. Pause. But then also we'll see what they can turn Bradley Beal into. But yeah, I wanted to give some love to Phoenix and then they also drafted Kobe Brea, who's the sharpshooter from Kentucky. I don't know if he's going to crack the rotation or not, but he's a sniper. He doesn't really play. He ain't got no defense at all, but he's a sniper. But I liked Phoenix draft. And then the last team I want to give you guys for my draft winners is the Orlando Magic, man. Orlando, again, they've had a really good offseason, but they drafted really well. They ended up drafting Jace Richardson. And then they also drafted Noah Pinda in the second round, which to me was really good value for both of these players. They got Jace, I think, in the 20s. I think I got him at like 20. Oh, they got him at 20-something. I forgot. But they got him in the 20s, and some people had him, again, in their lottery. Some people had Noah Pinda in their lottery. I didn't have either one of these dudes in my lottery. I had them both for that next set, that 15 to 30 range. So for them to get one dude who some people have as a lottery pick in Jace, but then for them to get somebody that has that top 30 potential and Noah Pinda in the second round, that's just great value, you know. Great value for the Orlando Magic. But that does it for my draft winners. Now I want to talk to you guys about some of my draft losers. We'll start off with the team that for some has been the laughing stock of the draft, and that was the Brooklyn Nets. They ended up drafting a lot of guys that, you know, kind of does a lot of the same things. They drafted Nolan Triati. They drafted Yegar Demon. They drafted Ben Sarif. And it's just kind of redundant because all three of those dudes pretty much all do the same thing. They're all pass first for the most part. Ben Sarif is one of my draft sleepers, but I don't know if I like him in Brooklyn, man. I don't know, man. I don't know what to make of that. The biggest thing that was interesting to me is that them drafting all those guards, I don't know if it's going to come true or not, but signals to me they may end up trying to get off of Cam Thomas. They may try to trade Cam Thomas. Because why are you drafting all these guards that need the ball in their hands? These are not players that can play off the ball. Like, I've watched all these dudes pretty thoroughly. Like, these are not dudes that are going to be your shooting guard. So I don't know what their thinking was. Maybe it's similar to what Minnesota did when they drafted Ricky Rubio and Johnny Flynn and did not draft Steph Curry. Maybe that's what this is, where they're trying to, you know, play in the numbers game. But then also they drafted Danny Wolf, and Wolf didn't seem too happy about being drafted there. But yeah, Brooklyn, I don't know what they were doing there. I thought Brooklyn was going to try to package those picks and try to move up, try to condense them, and try to get a better high-end player. But we'll see what happens. I was really surprised that Yegar Demon went to 8 to them. I didn't have him mocked that high for me personally. I think I had him. I don't even think I had him in my lottery. I think I ended up taking him out of my top 15. But some people I know had him pretty high as well. So we'll see what happens with that. Maybe they turn out to be geniuses, you know. Another team that I thought lost the draft, or that was a draft loser, was the New Orleans Pelicans. I love them drafting Jeremiah Fears. Mind y'all, he reclassified. He's really supposed to be going into his freshman year in college. But I do like him long term. In the short term, I think he's going to be a good insurance policy for DeJounte Murray. Derek Queen is kind of where I'm disappointed, and not because it's Derek Queen. Basically, I don't like that they traded up to go get him, because then that means they're betting on themselves and also betting on the Bucks, because again, I just told you guys, Atlanta gets their pick. Whoever has the highest pick in this draft, in the next year's draft, they're going to get either New Orleans or Milwaukee's pick. So that was pretty wild to me that they did that trade. But also, I really don't like the fit with Queen and Zion. So that lets me know, in my opinion, Zion is on the clock in New Orleans, which I think most of us have kind of had that in the back of our minds. But I think this kind of expedites it a little bit, because they're not That's not a long-term duo. Derek Queen's not that good of a defender, in my opinion. And we know what Zion is, like in the space, it just doesn't work. It's not going to work long term. And you guys can put me on the record, and I'm on the record saying that. I don't think it's going to work unless they plan to use Derek Queen like he's Nikola Jokic, and they plan on using Zion as if Zion is Aaron Gordon, okay? If that's the case, then okay, maybe they do got something. But I don't think that's going to be the case. So Zion's on the clock, in my opinion. I think he's on the clock. I think this is it. This is the last year for Zion in New Orleans. They got to make something happen. I think New Orleans at least, I think, has to be either get to like a game 7 in the first round or get to the second round. As crazy as that may sound, I think that's the kind of pressure they're under with Joe Dumars under the helm. And my last team that I felt lost the draft was the Milwaukee Bucks. They simply lost the draft, in my opinion, because they had no first round. They had no pick in the first round. And I believe they really could have got somebody of value at pick 19 because that's where they were slated to draft. They did draft somebody in the second round, a European guy. All I know about him is that he's about 6'10", 6'11", and he can shoot. So I don't know if he's actually going to be a rotational player for them or not. We'll see what happens with that. I don't know much about him based off just what I told you guys. That's all I really know about him. But yeah, they're one of my draft losers simply because I felt like they really could have got somebody at 19, But that was the product of they ended up losing that pick because I think that pick went to, maybe New Orleans, maybe. I can't remember who that pick went to, but yeah, they lost that pick. So I was like, to me, that's kind of disappointment. It's kind of disappointing. My last segment is what to expect in free agency. Unfortunately, free agency's already started, and there's already been a bunch of transactions. So this segment was going to be about what to expect in it, even though, that's what it was going to be about, and it's on me because I should have recorded this episode a lot sooner. But, so what we're going to talk about, I just want to talk about just a little bit about kind of what to expect moving forward from teams. And then also I want to talk about some of my free agent winners, what teams have won in free agency in my opinion. So I just want to say this. I think that the NBA I think it started last summer. I think it's a lot more prevalent this summer. And I was really thinking about this a couple months back when I was talking about OG. I told them Boston was going to have to break up their team as soon as they ended up getting... Actually, I talked about that last summer too, I think, for this team. If I remember correctly, I believe I did on my Boston season preview. But I'm saying that to say this. A lot of teams are going to be a lot more stingy with money moving forward. Let's be real. We see it already, right? The whole Tatum thing caused Boston pretty much to kind of fire sale. Indiana didn't want to pay Miles Turner, and now he's in Milwaukee. I think this is going to become kind of a norm where teams are going to be cautious about who they're giving that 70 to 80 million with. Dallas didn't want to pay Luka. We all know there's kind of a conspiracy around that as well outside of that, but they didn't want to pay Luka from what we were told. I just think this is something that's going to be kind of normalized. I think we're going to start seeing players getting waived more often than not. I think we're going to see more buyouts. I think we're going to see more likelihoods for sign and trades. Sign and trades could potentially be the new free agency, in my opinion, moving forward. And I think also that second apron is it's kind of like the ring of death on the old Xbox. You know what I'm saying? Or you being the last person standing on Search and Destroy on, Black Ops 1 at fire range. It's just you and there's 5 other people on the other team. You know what I'm saying? Your team's already down 2-1 in the series. You guys know what I'm talking about. My old Black Ops heads, you know what I'm talking about. It's that second apron is going to be deadly. So I think a lot of teams are going to try to avoid the second apron. But yeah, I think there are a lot of teams who's going to be cautious about who they're giving those big paydays to. And I don't really blame teams for that. At the end of the day, you're trying to build a championship team. And if you're investing $70 million into one player, to me, that's just not a good investment. That's just not. Obviously, Shea got his $70 million. But Shea's 26. Shea just won a title. Shea's shown that he's durable. Shea has shown that he can be trusted with that kind of, he can be trusted within that organization, by his demeanor and then also his play on the court. I think we're just going to see it normalize where a lot of dudes are not going to get this monster payday, and they shouldn't. I would rather give my superstar $50 million, you know what I'm saying, $50 million, and then spread the rest of that money amongst a bunch of really high-level starters, So I just think it's something we got to just be mindful of moving forward. Watching out for these dudes not getting these big paydays and just getting offloaded and traded because so. And I don't blame them. I do not blame them for wanting to not pay somebody 70, 80 million, okay? So that's something I just wanted to tell you guys, because obviously this is I'm saying that, which I'm just saying that so then it just sets us ready for the season previews. When I go into my season previews for each team, I talk about the team's finances as well. So I just want to let you guys know where I'm coming from, because that's how I'm going to be moving and thinking about it. Like, okay, is this going to save teams money? Does it make sense for the teams to buy the player out, do a sign and trade next summer? Should they waive them? So I just wanted to kind of just, level set with you guys. Like, I think moving forward, this is what the NBA is going to be. I think these last 2 weeks have kind of shown us what it's going to be moving forward. And we'll see what it comes out of it. We'll see if teams are able to build a dynasty or not. We'll see how players respond to it. Do players start acting different about it, or want to only be in certain organizations that they know are going to pay them? It's just something to monitor, and I'm looking forward to it because it's something we've never seen before. And the cap only goes up 7% next year, so it's going to be interesting. Now I want to talk about some of my free agent teams that are winners. One is the Atlanta Hawks. I thought Atlanta had a pretty good draft, and they're one of my draft winners, obviously. And then they're one of my winners in free agency, man. They got Nickeil Alexander-Walker. They got Luke Kennard. They got Kristaps Porzingis in that trade. I thought Atlanta's had a really good last week. They've done really, really well. I think they see blood in the water with no Boston. They feel good about Trae Young going to Madison Square Garden because he owns the Knicks. They feel good about that. They feel good about him going into Philadelphia. Watch out for the Hawks, man. The Hawks had a really good offseason. I don't know if they've used their $24 million trade exception yet or not, because from my understanding for that Porzingis trade, they did not use it. So that's something that potentially still could be used. Okay, so just watch out, man. Atlanta's coming. They're having a great offseason. Another team is the Denver Nuggets. Denver did a great job at retooling their bench and kind of soaring up. Potentially, we'll see what Cam Johnson can give to them, but also improving maybe their offense as well in their starting lineup. They got Cam Johnson. They did a good job of going to get Bruce Brown back. They got Jonas Valanciunas to back up Jokic that can go in there and bang. Deron Holmes, he'll be coming back this upcoming year. He was injured last year. I think he either tore his Achilles or ACL. He's going to be a contributor this season, I believe. I really liked him out of Dayton a lot, and I talked about him last year to you guys on the pod. Julian Strawther's going to be better this upcoming year. Jalen Pickett's going to be better. Peyton Watson's going to be better. Christian Brown is going to be better. And then most importantly, David Adelman. He's going to have a full year he'll have a full season with this team, a full offseason to implement his offense and defensive systems. I really like what Denver did, man. I loved what they have done. I loved it. Another team is Orlando. Orlando did a really good job at drafting. Thought they had a really good draft. I talked to you guys about their draft. But then in free agency, and also on the trade market, they got Desmond Bane. Yes, they gave up a lot of draft picks, which I'm not going to sit up here and talk about that. That's not relevant, what I'm talking about right now. I ain't going to talk about it right now. We'll save that for when I get to my season preview and talk more deeply about Orlando. But they got Desmond Bane. I thought they did a really good job at the two kids they got in the draft. They also got Tyus Jones, which I thought was a sneaky sign, and I thought they needed a true point guard. So there's going to be times down the stretch where they have Tyus Jones, Jalen Suggs, Desmond Bane, Franz, and then Paolo starting like that. I like that group down the stretch of games. It's kind of a small lineup. I really, really like that for them. I really like what they did during free agency. I also liked what there's another team that I really liked. Oh, Houston. Houston did a really good job at basically bringing back some of their same guys. All they really did was add Kevin Durant. They added Clint Capella. I think they added somebody else as well. And Denver also added Tim Hardaway Jr. I thought that was a really good grab for Denver as well, getting him. But I felt like Houston added somebody else outside of those players I just named to you guys. I can't remember. I didn't take notes on this because I wasn't coming into the segment thinking to talk about this stuff, so I didn't take notes on it. But they added somebody else as well. I just can't remember who else they added. But Houston had a really good offseason as well, in my opinion. Another team, so I did Denver, I did Atlanta, I did Houston, I did Orlando. We'll just leave it at that. We'll just leave it at those four teams. I don't want to sit up here and just keep talking more and more to you guys about what other teams had a really good so far, free agency, in my opinion. But those four, in my opinion, had the best so far. Just to reiterate it, Denver, Houston, Orlando, and Atlanta. All four of those teams I thought had really, really good free agencies. And so far, off seasons as a whole. Again, I told you guys, watch out. I think Atlanta still has that $24 million a trade exception that has to be used by July 7th. So we'll see if they use it, or maybe they did use it, and maybe I'm just missing out on it. But yeah, I'll see you guys in 3 weeks on July 20th. You guys have a good 4th of July, and PJ is out.